This video was brought to you by CuriosityStream. 2022 has been a tough year for politicians. With inflation going up and living standards going down, most incumbents have seen their poll numbers decline, and those unfortunate enough to face the electorate have, in most cases, been kicked out of office. Turkey is no different in this respect. Inflation rose to a 25-year high of 85% in October, in large part thanks to Erdogan's unorthodox monetary policy. And Erdogan's poll numbers have sharply declined. Unsurprisingly, Erdogan isn't going down without a fight, and he's reacted to the pressure by taking increasingly jingoistic foreign policy positions and jailing his political opponents. So in this video, we thought we'd take a look at 1. How Erdogan fell out of favour with the Turkish electorate, 2. His attempts to hold on to power, and 3. Whether, if things continue in this vein, Turkey's democracy can survive the 2023 elections. So let's start by looking at how Erdogan fell out of favour with the Turkish electorate. In some sense, Erdogan's decline was inevitable. While he was genuinely a very popular politician in his heyday, generally politicians get less popular over time, and Erdogan has been in power for the best part of 2 decades. However, in the last year or so, Erdogan's decline has been accelerated by his mismanagement of the Turkish economy. Essentially, in part because Turkey's economy relies quite heavily on imports, Turkey's inflation rate has surged over the last year or so. Usually, central banks hike rates to reduce inflation, but Erdogan thinks this idea is a conspiracy advanced by the so-called interest rate lobby, and instead decided to cut rates and fire any central banker who dared to disagree with him. Accordingly, the central bank has cut rates from 19% in March 2021 to 10.5% today. And, as orthodox economists would have predicted, year-on-year inflation has jumped from 20% to 85.5% in the last 12 months. This is the highest inflation rate seen in Turkey since Erdogan came to power 20 years ago, when, somewhat ironically, he promised to bring down inflation from its crazy highs of the 1990s. While this might sound bad, unofficial estimates suggest things are even worse than the Turkish Statistical Institute is admitting. A separate index that measures inflation in Istanbul, compiled by the city's Chamber of Commerce, put it at 107%, while another unofficial index developed by the Independent Inflation Research Group put it at 185%. Apparently undeterred, Erdogan has said he wants to continue cutting rates and plans to get them down into the single digits by the end of the year. While Turkey's GDP has apparently held up relatively well, inflation has eaten away at ordinary Turks' living standards. The Turkish economy grew at 11% in 2021 and is forecast to grow at 7% in 2022. But these impressive GDP figures don't reflect the economic reality for most ordinary Turks. Growth has been driven by strong exports enabled by a weak currency and a desperate consumption binge by Turkish households, who have realised that they need to spend their lira before it becomes valueless. Despite successive minimum wage increases, wages are still way behind inflation, and the vast majority of Turks have seen a steep decline in their living standards. Accordingly, Erdogan's poll ratings have fallen to an all-time low. The gap between his AKP party and the main opposition party, the CHP, has narrowed significantly in the past year, and he's at serious risk of losing his parliamentary majority in the 2023 elections. While the opposition hasn't decided on their candidate, the most recent polling for the presidential election, which will happen alongside the parliamentary elections in June, suggests that he's currently behind or level with the 3 most likely candidates. These are Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu, the 73-year-old leader of the CHP, Mansur Yavaş, the mayor of Ankara, and Ekrem İmamoğlu, the mayor of Istanbul. According to the most recent polling, the most popular of these is Yavaş, who currently enjoys a 20-point lead over Erdogan. Second place is İmamoğlu, who has an 8-point lead but an impressive track record against AKP candidates. You might remember him from 2019, when he was narrowly elected as mayor of Istanbul. Upset by the result, Erdogan cancelled the results of the election, only for İmamoğlu to win by a landslide the second time around. Third place is Kılıçdaroğlu, who is basically level with Erdogan in the polls. Kılıçdaroğlu is basically a distinguished elder statesman who's lost to Erdogan multiple times in the past. Kılıçdaroğlu is apparently reluctant to step aside, but if he eventually acquiesces and hands over the mantle to either Yavaş or İmamoğlu, polling suggests they would almost definitely become Turkey's next president. Unfortunately for Turkey's democracy, Erdogan isn't going down without a fight. Last week, a Turkish court packed with AKP loyalists sentenced İmamoğlu to more than 2 years in prison and banned him from politics for calling members of Turkey's Supreme Election Council fools in the aftermath of his controversial 2019 mayoral victory. While İmamoğlu is expected to appeal the ruling, the ensuing court case could still block him from running in 2023. This isn't the first time Erdogan and the AKP have instrumentalised the judiciary to protect the president either. The head of the CHP's Istanbul branch was banned from politics and given a suspended 5-year prison sentence for accusing Erdogan of theft in a tweet. And in January, the courts are due to rule on potentially banning the Kurdish-majority HDP party from politics, who are currently polling about 10%. As well as instrumentalising the judiciary, Erdogan has also tried to shift the electorate's attention away from domestic economic issues and towards foreign policy by taking increasingly hawkish stances, presumably in an attempt to out-patriot his opponents. Take, for instance, the rhetoric that Erdogan has employed against Greece in the last few months. In a speech on Sunday the 11th of December, Erdogan warned Turkish-made Typhoon missiles could hit Athens unless the Greeks, quote, stay calm. A week before, Erdogan's foreign minister warned that if Greece didn't stop allegedly militarising the Aegean Islands, the Turkish military would, quote, take the necessary steps on the ground. Erdogan's looming invasion of Syria should be understood in a similar light. While Erdogan is genuinely worried about Syrian-inspired Kurdish separatism in Turkey, and it's true that Russia's relative withdrawal from the region has left an exploitable vacuum, his prospective invasion is predominantly an attempt to refocus the election on foreign policy and the issue of Kurdish separatism. Anyway, you get the idea. Erdogan is losing in the polls, and he's reacted by trying to jail his political opponents and upping the ante on foreign policy issues. This doesn't bode well for Turkish democracy, especially because all the signs suggest that things are about to get worse. Inflation shows no sign of slowing down, and if anything, Turkey's economic situation will probably get worse before it gets better. This is because Turkey's recent growth spurt was driven by consumption and exports. But as inflation eats away at Turkish savings, consumption will dry up, and the global economic slowdown will reduce demand for Turkish exports. JP Morgan now forecasts a 2% contraction in Q3 and zero growth in Q4, while the ING Group expects a further 1.8% contraction in the first quarter of 2023. This is pretty worrying news, because if recent history is anything to go by, more bad news for Erdogan will only mean more desperate attempts to cling on to power. All in all, it looks like 2023 could be the make or break year for Turkish democracy. And right now, it's make or break time for our Nebula subscription deal. That's because Nebula is having a big sale at the moment. You've heard me tell you about Nebula before, but there's a big sale on right now, so if you've ever considered signing up, now's the time. Essentially though, Nebula is the streaming service we built with a bunch of your other favourite creators. Over there, we've posted a bunch of exclusive full-length TLDR videos which will never come to YouTube, but you'll also find a load of our normal videos early and ad-free there too. As I said, it's not just us either, there's tons of other amazing creators too, which makes it astonishing you can get all of this exclusive and ad-free content for less than $1 a month. Normally, people sell you things as being less than a cup of coffee. This is less than a bottle of water, and a fraction of what other streaming services are charging. Services which don't directly support independent creators. This crazy good offer is only available right now, and it's only possible through our Nebula Curiosity Stream bundle. Essentially, if you sign up to Curiosity Stream for the crazy low price of $11.59 a year, then you get free access to Nebula as long as you're a member. That's right, 2 platforms for less than $1 a month. And Curiosity Stream is awesome. It contains absolutely boatloads of high-quality documentaries on all kinds of topics I know TLDR viewers will love. So if you want both for less than $1 a month, then the link's down below. And if you've ever considered signing up to support TLDR, now's the cheapest time to do so. So, thank you.